Welcome to the Economy Magazine at I-24 News, where we give you a daily view on global business and innovation. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Well, coming up on the program, U.S. presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton puts the spotlight on inequality. And the colonial-era ferry in Hong Kong offers affordability as well as charm. Well, let's start now with the headlines. Big news. Saudi Arabia's $590 billion stock market is now open to foreign investors. For years, the Gulf's top-performing market was one of few financial markets to restrict foreign investment. And with the stellar growth the previous year, up 16%, Riyadh could very well expect to see an influx of tens of billions of dollars. The move will likely ease the pressure on the government caused by weak oil prices. The debut is a while in the coming, though, making nearly a year after the kingdom first announced its plans. Well, Greece could now be finally in the 11th hour. Talks with Europe collapsed over the weekend, raising the probability that Athens could very well default on its debt payments. According to reports in Greek media, the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras would hold an emergency government meeting on Monday midday. This, as European shares were also jittered by the breakdown in negotiations. As in previous impasses, European officials blame Greece for failing to offer enough concessions. Greece has been slow to adopt pension reforms in exchange for desperately needed cash. Well, now to the U.S. President Obama's plans to expand trade in the Pacific are getting pushback from members of his own party in Congress. On Sunday, officials in the Obama administration said they still expected Congress would go ahead and pass the legislation, causing a deal with 11 other countries in the Pacific. But Democrats, even presidential runner Hillary Clinton, expressed caution last week, pointing to possible repercussions for U.S. workers, as well as skepticism surrounding the negotiations themselves. The Republicans have responded more favorably to such a deal. President Obama is not expected to get much help from the GOP as it looks to put the spotlight on a messy inter-party fight, just in time for the 2016 presidential race. And Europe sounded the alarm on big telecom mergers, saying that they could greatly harm consumers and didn't necessarily lead to better investments. Speaking at an event in Paris on Monday, Europe's antitrust chief, Margrethe Vestager, said that she didn't believe telecom operators had to merge with competitors in the same country in order to increase their investment in networks. Her strong words come amid a telecom deal blitz over the past 18 months in that region. Well, the 2016 presidential race is heating up in the U.S. with a speech largely focusing now on the economy from second-time runner Hillary Clinton.
U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton held her first major campaign rally on Roosevelt Island overlooking Manhattan. Clinton's speech celebrated working people as central to the country's recovery since the crisis of 2008, and heavily emphasized economic issues as central to her outlook. While she also highlighted her left-of-center stances on marriage equality, women's rights, and climate change, her focus was squarely on the inequality which continues to deepen in the United States.
Prosperity can't be just for CEOs and hedge fund managers. Democracy can't be just for billionaires and corporations. Prosperity and democracy are part of your basic bargain, too.
Though Hillary Clinton is the favorite in the Democratic primary race, much attention has been paid to Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders, who entered the race last month. Notably, the Democratic New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio skipped the event and mentioned that he likes Senator Sanders. Inequality has been a central and rising issue in these campaigns, in both parties' primaries. That didn't stop Clinton from calling out Republicans for their lack of focus on the issue.
These Republicans trip over themselves, promising lower taxes for the wealthy and fewer rules for the biggest corporations. They pledge to wipe out tough rules on Wall Street rather than rein in the banks that are still too risky.
The race is long and shifts in fortune are common in primaries. Still, as Hillary Clinton turns up the heat on her campaign, one thing is for sure in this race. Inequality is at the center of this race's economic debate, and fortune looks like it will shine brightly on those focused on the less fortunate.
And now for a look at Greece as well as Israel from a legal perspective. We are joined on set by Muriel Matalon, Senior Managing Partner at Gornitsky & Company. Now, Gornitsky is an Israeli law firm which specializes in all areas of commercial law. Thank you so much for joining us today. So what is the latest on Greece? Where do you expect this to go?
Well, first and foremost, we have seen this weekend, the G7 meeting in Germany. Interesting enough, it's the G7. In my opinion, it should have been the G11, because what is missing is not only Russia, which was excluded because of the Ukraine event, but we should have seen there all the major BRIC countries, which are Brazil, Russia, India, and China.
Well, that's a unique perspective. You actually think the BRICS should be involved in Greece and Europe?
And I think they should, since they are leading the world economy, I think they should have been there. But going back now to the issue of Greece, it's very interesting to see what happened between Greece and Germany, who is leading the European campaign to see how to restructure the Greek economy. And obviously, it's not only economy. It's a lot of politics, it's culture, the difference of culture between countries like Germany and the southern European countries like Greece, Italy, and Spain. And most of all, it's history. And for us Israelis, seeing now the dispute in Greece, should we accept the requests of Germany, or should we counter by going back to what happened 60 and 70 years ago when Germany conquered Greece and to a great extent destroyed the economy? And should we ask now for compensation? These are very interesting issues which, to my understanding, are pouring a lot of politics into something which should have been economic. And I believe that Germany, Europe, should sit with Greece and try to set up a much more productive dialogue to resolve the issues.
I see. So you do think that actually Germany perhaps should make some more concessions towards Greece. But let's now move closer to home to Israel. We do know that currently the new government is looking to hike the purchase tax on real estate. What is the motivation behind that?
Yes, the government decided yesterday to increase the purchase tax from 6% average to 8% on purchasing the second apartment, not the first apartment, but the one that people purchase for investment. And the reason is obviously because of the rise, the dramatic rise in prices of apartments in recent years, which makes it almost impossible for young couples to purchase their own apartment. And obviously, there is the demand and the supply. And the easier way for the government is to try to suppress the demand by restricting investors from going into the market, which is a difficult issue because these investors don't have other tools. The interest rates are lower and so forth. But in my opinion, the most important program should be to increase the supply, not only to suppress the demand. And that takes much longer time. I do believe that the government understands it and that there will be plans in order to increase the supply.
Well, why is the supply so low?
The supply is low because it takes such a long time, because of the bureaucratic process to start building a new apartment. Last week I heard the new minister of construction, General Gallant, explaining that it takes 15 years from the day you decide to create a new neighborhood until the first neighbor joins that neighborhood.
Well, how does that compare to other parts of the world? Just to get a point of comparison here with bureaucracy and perhaps even corruption.
Yeah, I think if you take Singapore, which used to be a country of swamps some 40 years ago and took a lot of advice from Israelis, and I've been there several times in recent years, and you see what they have done by putting all the agencies together under one regime. Now we are moving to that direction. Finance Minister Kahlon insisted that all these relevant agencies will all be controlled by his own party. But that's not enough. We need also to change the rules and to change the bureaucracy and the red tape, which is almost impossible.
Well, staying on that front, they're also looking into executive pay and putting limitations on that. Can you just please explain briefly here?
Yes. Here, for different reasons, the government, the previous government and the new government is trying to impose a limit on the salary of the top executives. They suggest 3.5 million shekels, and on top of that, it will not be recognized as an expense for the employer. Now, to that, my main comment is that it's very, very difficult and a great mistake to try to take small companies, large companies, profitable companies, and losing companies, and all of them, put them in just one criteria and say that's the limit. In my opinion, the way to look at it would be to look at the NBA. Interesting enough, NBA basketball, which started at the United States, imposed some 40, 50 years ago a soft system of capping salaries, which is linked to the performance of the team. The salary. That's
an excellent point. We'd love to have you back on the program another time, but that's all the time we have for now. Thank you very much, Mario Matalon, for that insight. Now switching gears to China. In Hong Kong, the ferry there is not the #1 form of transport, but after 100 years in operation, it still offers unbeatable prices and a certain charm.
Hong Kong, a modern city if ever there was one. Yet for many crossing the harbour, they choose the colonial-era Star Ferry. Around 9 minutes journey at the unbeatable price of around 25 cents.
The charges of ferry compared to bus or MTR, it's much cheaper and takes very less time to reach your destination. That's why I've selected the Star Ferry.
The view of Victoria Harbour is so nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
The service has been in operation for more than 100 years, transporting around 60,000 people every day. In their heyday, the ferries left at intervals of 3 minutes, and while the frequency has lessened, it still takes a steady hand to navigate the crossing.
It's like driving a car. If the road gets narrow, you really have to pay attention when parking in the garage. It's the same out there at sea, but if I have enough space, it is easier to avoid the other boats.
Some of the 8-strong fleet's boats date back half a century or so, all part of the attraction.
This got soul, and I don't know about the new stuff. It might be only plastic and maybe more comfortable, but no soul.
I think the fact that it's older also has its charm, right? So I don't know for how long. This is a very short ride, so then it's okay.
There may be road and rail tunnels transporting the bulk of Hong Kong's commuters and tourists, but for many, the ferry is still the only way to go.
And for the offbeat stories we didn't want you to miss, we're joined in studio by Daniel Roth. Thank you for being with us. So what do you have today?
#1 is Jurassic World.
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World, not Jurassic Park. Jurassic World just opened last weekend, this weekend, that just passed, and absolutely destroyed the global box office record for opening weekend. $500 million, over $500 million globally. In the U.S. alone, it pulled in about $210 billion.
But still, critics aren't that happy with this movie.
Sorry, I said billion. I meant million. That was #1. But the point is that yes, there are no critics who I've read who are happy with this movie.
And yet it sells.
And yet it sells. We're talking about $500 million around the world, 200 million in the U.S., and the critics are saying this is no good, and people are going in droves to this film.
So why do you think that's the case? What's so appealing about this film?
Well, #1 is it's dinosaurs. People just love dinosaurs. It's been proven with Jurassic Park, with the 2 sequels after it. Both of the sequels did not get any kind of rave reviews, but they also did quite well, not compared to Jurassic Park, and certainly not compared to Jurassic World.
And aside from this movie, the franchise must be doing very well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, actually the #1 thing that's changed is the advent of these 3D and IMAX theaters. #2 is Chris Pratt also, who's starring in this movie, who is in Guardians of the Galaxy and the Lego movie, who people also almost as much as dinosaurs seem to love this guy, Chris Pratt, who's really selling tickets everywhere he goes. Every movie he's in is selling across the board. And it's just incredibly surprising at the end of the day when a movie gets such terrible reviews, and actually the trailers look really lacking. And I'm not the only one saying this, but it just, we spent a lot of time thinking about what the CG should say for this, whether it mauled the box office or destroyed the box office or tore it apart, thinking of dinosaur jokes, but it's quite amazing how movies sell despite kind of the merit that they're expected to have.
Indeed. Well, that is quite surprising and perhaps not very good news for the highbrow movie business. But just real fast, what other article do you have for us?
We have from The Atlantic, actually. They have an in-depth look at Walmart's process of trying to convince employees not to unionize. And it's well worth the read. It's a little longer than usual. It's a long read, but it's absolutely worth reading to kind of understand how Walmart goes about this through kind of a mandatory education these days. They used to do it a little more forwardly, but I would just highly recommend this as a piece to understand one of the inner workings of business in America.
Well, I'll be sure to take a look at that, as I hope you will too. That does conclude our coverage today. Do stay tuned for all the latest in global business and innovation tomorrow, same time from the Jaffa Port in Tel Aviv. I'm Natalie Ehrlich. Thank you for watching.